Something has begun to shift in a way that is quiet but undeniable, something that is happening beyond what you can see directly, yet you may already feel it in subtle ways you cannot fully explain, and this shift is connected to someone who once walked away from you or allowed distance to grow between you without fully understanding what they were leaving behind. At the time, it may have seemed simple to them. They may have convinced themselves that it was the right decision, that things would be easier, that whatever connection existed between you could be replaced or forgotten with time. Before we dive into today's word, I want to thank our coffee partners. We are currently working toward a $120 goal to keep this ministry running and improve our quality. If this channel has been a blessing to you, please check the link in the description or comment box to support. Now, let's get into today's devotion. They may have moved forward without looking back, focusing on other things, other people, other distractions that made it easier to avoid thinking too deeply about what had happened. And for a while, it may have worked. They may have felt a sense of control, a sense that everything was fine, that nothing truly significant had been lost. But the truth about real connections is that they do not disappear just because they are ignored. They do not fade simply because someone chooses not to think about them. Instead, they remain quietly present, waiting for the moment when awareness returns. And that moment has now arrived for them. It did not come suddenly or dramatically. It did not announce itself in a way that could be easily recognized at first. Instead, it began in the same way many important realizations begin, quietly, almost unnoticed, in the middle of an ordinary moment. They may have been going through their usual routine, doing something simple, something that required no deep thought, when suddenly their mind shifted. A thought of you appeared, unexpected but clear. At first, they may have brushed it off, assuming it was just a passing memory, something that would disappear as quickly as it came. But it did not disappear. It stayed. And not only did it stay, it returned again later, and then again after that, each time carrying a little more weight than before. This is how the realization began, not with one thought, but with repeated thoughts that refused to fade. And repetition is what gives something meaning. The more it happened, the harder it became for them to ignore. They began to notice that their mind was returning to you more often, not just randomly, but in a way that felt connected, as if their thoughts were trying to show them something they had not fully understood before. Memories began to surface, not just isolated moments, but a series of experiences that had quietly shaped the connection between you. Conversations that once felt normal now stood out in a different way. The way you communicated, the ease of understanding, the comfort that existed without needing explanation, these were things they did not fully analyze at the time, but now they began to see them clearly. And with each memory, something inside them started to shift. They began to feel the difference between what they had with you and what they have experienced since. They may have tried to compare, even without meaning to, noticing how other interactions felt different, less natural, less meaningful. Not because others were lacking, but because what they had with you set a standard they did not recognize until it was gone. And this realization is what begins to create a sense of regret, even if it is not fully formed yet. At first, it may just feel like a quiet discomfort, a sense that something is missing, something that cannot be easily replaced. But as the thoughts continue, as the memories return, that discomfort begins to take shape into something more defined. They begin to understand that what they left behind was not something ordinary. It was something real, something that carried meaning, something that had depth they did not fully appreciate at the time. And once that understanding begins to form, it cannot be undone. They may try to distract themselves again, to return to their routine, to focus on other things, but it does not work the same way anymore. Because now, the awareness is there. They can no longer pretend that what they lost was insignificant. They can no longer convince themselves that it did not matter. The truth has begun to reveal itself, slowly but clearly, and that truth is what they are now facing. You may not see any of this happening directly. From your perspective, everything may still feel the same. There may be no messages, no clear signs, no direct indication that anything has changed. But something has changed, and it is happening within them in a way that will not stay hidden for long. Because when realization reaches this level, when someone begins to truly understand the value of what they lost, it does not remain a quiet thought forever. It grows. It becomes stronger. And eventually, it leads to something that cannot be ignored, something that moves beyond thought and into action. Right now, they are still in the stage of realization, still processing, still connecting the pieces. But they are no longer the same as they were before this shift began. Their perspective has changed. Their awareness has deepened. And the way they see you now is no longer casual or undefined. It is becoming clear, and that clarity is what will eventually guide everything that happens next. As this realization continues to grow inside them, it begins to move beyond simple thoughts and into something much deeper, something that starts to affect how they feel on a daily basis, and this is where everything becomes more intense, more real, and impossible for them to ignore any longer. What once appeared as occasional memories has now become something constant, something that follows them throughout their day, something that appears in quiet moments and refuses to fade the way ordinary thoughts usually do. They may try to continue with their routine, to focus on their responsibilities, to engage in conversations and activities as they normally would, but there is now a part of their mind that keeps returning to you again and again. And this repetition is what begins to create a kind of emotional awareness they were not prepared for. Because when someone cannot stop thinking about a person they once left behind, it forces them to confront something they had avoided before. At first, they may still try to dismiss it, telling themselves that it is just nostalgia, just a temporary reaction, just something that will pass with time. But the more they try to push it aside, the more it returns, and each time it returns, it carries a little more weight, a little more clarity. They begin to notice patterns in their thoughts, noticing how certain memories stand out more than others, how certain moments with you feel more vivid than anything else they have experienced recently. These are not random memories. They are the moments that held meaning, the moments that reflected something real between you, something that they did not fully understand at the time. And now, those moments are coming back with a new perspective, a perspective that allows them to see what they could not see before. They may begin to replay conversations in their mind, remembering how easily communication flowed, how natural it felt to share thoughts and ideas without hesitation, how there was a level of understanding that did not require explanation. And as they reflect on these memories, they begin to realize that what they had with you was not something ordinary. It was something that carried a sense of comfort and authenticity that is not easy to find. And this realization is what begins to shift their emotions in a deeper way. It is no longer just about thinking, it becomes about feeling. They begin to feel the absence of what you brought into their life, not just your presence, but the energy, the connection, the way things felt when everything was natural and unforced. This feeling of absence is what creates emotional weight, because once someone becomes aware of what is missing, they cannot simply ignore it and move forward as if nothing has changed. They may start to compare their current experiences with what they had with you, noticing how things feel different now, how conversations may lack depth, how interactions may feel less genuine, how something always seems slightly incomplete. And this comparison is not something they are trying to do intentionally, it happens naturally, because once someone has experienced a certain level of connection, it becomes a reference point. And now, everything else is being measured against that reference, whether they realize it or not. This is when the realization begins to turn into regret, even if they do not fully label it that way yet. It starts as a feeling, a quiet understanding that something valuable was lost, something that cannot be easily replaced or recreated. They may begin to question themselves, wondering why they didn't see it sooner, why they assumed it would always be there, why they allowed distance to grow without trying to understand what they were walking away from. These questions do not have immediate answers, but they serve an important purpose. They deepen the awareness they are already experiencing. And with that awareness comes a stronger emotional response, one that becomes harder to contain with each passing day. You may not see this happening, but you may begin to feel something shifting, a subtle sense that something is changing, even if you cannot fully explain it. This is because what they are experiencing is not staying contained within them. It is building, growing, moving towards something that will eventually become visible. Because once someone reaches this level of awareness, once they begin to understand the true value of what they lost, it does not remain a quiet realization forever. It begins to create movement, a pull that draws them back toward what they now recognize as meaningful. Right now, they are still processing, still reflecting, still allowing this realization to take shape. But they are no longer the same as they were before this started. Their perspective has changed. Their understanding has deepened. And the way they see you now is no longer something they can ignore or dismiss. It is becoming something clear, something real, something that is beginning to guide their thoughts in a direction they can no longer avoid, a direction that will eventually lead them towards something they did not expect when they first walked away. As this realization continues to deepen within them, it begins to reach a point where it is no longer just something they think about. It becomes something they feel consistently, something that follows them throughout their day and begins to shape their emotional state in ways they did not expect. What once felt like passing thoughts has now turned into something much more persistent, something that appears in moments of silence, in pauses between tasks, in times when they are alone with nothing to distract them. And in those moments, the truth becomes clearer than ever. They are no longer just remembering you. They are understanding what you meant to them. And that understanding carries weight, because it forces them to confront something they had not fully acknowledged before. They begin to realize that what they had with you was not something that could be easily replaced, not something that could be recreated with someone else simply by moving on. It was something specific, something unique, something that existed because of the way you and them connected in a way that felt natural and unforced. And now that they can see that clearly, everything begins to feel different. The absence of that connection is no longer something they can ignore, it becomes something they feel. They may notice that even when they are surrounded by other people, there is still a sense of something missing, a quiet emptiness that they cannot quite explain. Conversations may feel surface level compared to what they experienced with you. Interactions may feel less meaningful, less engaging. Not because others are lacking, but because what they shared with you set a certain standard that they didn't fully recognize at the time. And now that that standard is no longer present in the same way, the difference becomes impossible to ignore. This is where the emotional impact becomes stronger. Because once someone begins to feel the absence of something meaningful, it creates a kind of internal tension that does not go away easily. They may try to push it aside, to focus on other things, to convince themselves that they can move forward without looking back. But it does not work the same way anymore. Because now, the awareness is there. They can no longer pretend that what they had with you was something small or insignificant. They can no longer tell themselves that it did not matter. The truth has become too clear. And with that clarity comes a deeper level of reflection. They may begin to think more seriously about their own actions, about the choices they made, about the way things unfolded between you. They may question why they didn't recognize the value of the connection when they had it, why they assumed there would always be more time, why they allowed things to become distant without trying to understand what was happening. These questions do not have easy answers, but they serve an important purpose. They bring accountability. And accountability is what transforms simple realization into something deeper, something more personal. Because now, it is not just about what was lost, it is about understanding their role in how it was lost. This is when regret begins to take shape in a more defined way. It is no longer just a vague feeling, it becomes something they can identify, something they can feel clearly. It is the realization that something meaningful slipped away, not because it wasn't valuable, but because they didn't fully see its value at the time. And this realization carries emotional weight, because it cannot be undone. They cannot go back to the moment when things were still present and change how they acted. They can only see it now, from a distance, with a clarity they did not have before. And that is what makes it so powerful. At the same time, this growing awareness begins to create a shift in their thoughts about the future. It is no longer just about looking back, it becomes about what to do next. They may begin to feel a pull, a sense that something is unfinished, something that cannot simply be left the way it is. They may start to consider whether it is possible to reconnect, whether it is possible to express what they now understand, whether it is too late or whether there is still a chance to say what was never said. These thoughts bring both hope and uncertainty, because while they feel the importance of what they lost, they do not know how you will respond now, they do not know whether your perspective has changed, they do not know whether the connection can be revisited in the same way. But even with that uncertainty, the feeling does not go away. In fact, it becomes stronger, because now it is tied to the idea of action. You may begin to sense something shifting at this stage, a subtle awareness that something is changing, that something is moving toward you even if it has not reached you yet. This feeling is connected to the process they are going through, to the emotional shift that is no longer just internal but is beginning to move outward. Because once someone reaches this level of realization, once regret becomes clear and meaningful, it does not remain quiet forever. It begins to create movement, a desire to act, a need to address what has been left unresolved. Right now, they are still in the stage of feeling and understanding, but they are no longer where they were before. Their perspective has changed completely. Their awareness has deepened. And the way they see you now is no longer something they can ignore or move past. It is something that is guiding their thoughts, their emotions, and eventually, their actions in a direction that is bringing them closer to doing something they once believed they would never need to do. As this awareness continues to deepen within them, it reaches a point where it is no longer something they can keep contained within their thoughts, and this is where the emotional weight begins to turn into something more active, something that starts to influence not just how they feel, but what they begin to consider doing next. Up until now, they have been moving through a process of realization, thinking about you, remembering moments, understanding the value of what they lost. But now that process begins to shift into something more intentional. Because once someone fully recognizes the significance of what they had and the role they played in losing it, it creates a sense of responsibility that cannot be ignored. They may begin to feel that simply understanding is not enough, that awareness without action leaves something unresolved, something unfinished. And this is what begins to change their mindset. They are no longer just reflecting on the past. They are starting to think about the present, about what they can do now, about whether it is possible to address what has already happened. They may find themselves returning to the same thoughts repeatedly, not just remembering, but questioning. Should they reach out? Should they say something? Should they try to explain what they now understand? These questions begin to take up more space in their mind, becoming more frequent, more persistent. And with each time they ask themselves these questions, the idea of doing nothing begins to feel less acceptable. Because now, doing nothing feels like allowing the same mistake to continue. It feels like choosing silence again, even though they now understand the cost of that silence. This is where internal conflict becomes stronger. On one side, there is the desire to act, the need to express what they feel, the understanding that something important should not remain unspoken. On the other side, there is uncertainty, hesitation, and the fear of what might happen if they take that step. They may worry about how you will respond, whether you will be open to hearing from them, whether too much time has passed, whether the connection still holds the same meaning for you. These uncertainties create hesitation, but they do not remove the desire to act. Instead, they create a tension between what they feel they should do and what they are afraid to do. And this tension is what keeps the situation active in their mind. They may try to delay the decision, telling themselves they need more time, that they should wait for the right moment, that they should be certain before taking any action. But the truth is, the more they wait, the stronger the feeling becomes. Because once someone reaches this level of awareness, once they understand the value of what they lost and the role they played in losing it, it does not fade with time, it intensifies. It continues to remind them that something is unresolved, that something needs to be addressed. They may begin to notice that even small reminders of you trigger deeper thoughts, that even simple moments bring them back to the same realization, that no matter what they are doing, there is always a part of their mind that returns to this. And this constant return is what begins to push them closer to action. Because eventually, the need to resolve something becomes stronger than the fear of addressing it. They may start to imagine what it would be like to reach out, to finally say what they have been thinking, to express the understanding they now have. They may think about how the conversation might begin, what they would say, how you might respond. These thoughts bring both anticipation and uncertainty, but they also bring clarity. Because even though they do not know the outcome, they know that staying silent is no longer something they can continue doing. You may begin to feel something shifting at this stage, a stronger sense that something is about to happen, that something is moving toward you even if you cannot yet see it. This feeling is connected to the stage they are in, to the internal decision that is slowly forming, to the movement from reflection to action. Because they are no longer just thinking about what happened, they are thinking about what to do about it. And once someone reaches that point, action becomes inevitable. It may not happen immediately, it may still take a little time for them to fully gather the courage to act, but the direction is already clear. They are no longer moving away from the connection. They are being drawn back toward it, not in a rushed or impulsive way, but in a way that is guided by understanding, by awareness, by the realization that something meaningful should not remain unresolved. And this is where everything begins to shift from being internal to becoming something that will soon reach you directly, something that will break the silence that once existed and bring everything into a new stage where nothing is left unspoken. As this internal struggle continues to build inside them, it reaches a stage where the balance between hesitation and action begins to tip, and this is where everything starts to feel more immediate, more real, and far more difficult for them to delay any longer, because what they are experiencing is no longer just reflection. It has become a need, a growing sense that something must be done, something must be said, and that continuing to remain silent would only deepen the regret they are already beginning to feel so clearly. The thoughts that once came and went are now constant, almost like a quiet voice that follows them throughout their day, reminding them of what they now understand, reminding them of what they lost, and reminding them that they have not yet addressed it. They may find that even when they try to focus on other things, there is always a part of their mind that returns to you, to the connection, to the moments that now carry so much more meaning than they did before. And this constant return is what creates emotional pressure, not overwhelming, but steady, persistent, and impossible to ignore. They may begin to feel that they are standing at a crossroads, a point where doing nothing is no longer neutral. It feels like a choice in itself, a choice to let something meaningful remain unresolved, a choice to carry this awareness without ever acting on it. And that realization is what begins to push them forward. Because now, the idea of not reaching out starts to feel heavier than the fear of reaching out. They may begin to think more seriously about what they would say if they did decide to contact you. Not just vague thoughts, but actual words, actual ways of expressing what they have come to understand. They may mentally rehearse how the conversation might begin, how they might explain their perspective, how they might acknowledge what happened and what they now see differently. And this process of thinking through it is not random, it is preparation. It is their mind slowly aligning with the idea of taking action, becoming more comfortable with the possibility, reducing the uncertainty that once held them back. At the same time, the emotional side of this process becomes stronger. They are no longer just aware of what they lost, they are feeling the impact of that loss in a deeper way. They may notice that certain moments feel emptier than before, that certain experiences feel incomplete, that something is missing in a way that cannot be easily replaced. And this feeling is what gives urgency to their thoughts. Because once someone feels the absence of something meaningful, it becomes difficult to accept that absence without trying to change it. They may begin to question themselves more directly now, asking why they didn't act differently when they had the chance, why they assumed there would always be time, why they allowed things to become distant without fully understanding the consequences. These questions do not bring immediate answers, but they deepen the emotional awareness they are already experiencing. And with that awareness comes a stronger desire to do something about it. You may begin to feel something shifting more noticeably at this stage, a sense that something is building, that something is approaching, even if you cannot yet see what it is. This feeling is not random, it is connected to the stage they are in, to the movement from internal realization to external action. Because they are no longer in a place of simply thinking about what happened, they are moving toward doing something about it. They may still hesitate at times, still question whether it is the right moment, still feel uncertain about how you will respond, but those moments of hesitation are becoming shorter, less powerful, less able to stop what is building inside them. Because now, the desire to act is stronger than the fear of acting. And that shift is what makes everything feel so close, so immediate. They are no longer standing far from the idea of reaching out, they are standing right at the edge of it. And once someone reaches that point, it becomes only a matter of time before action follows. They may begin to feel that if they wait any longer, they risk losing the opportunity completely, that the longer they delay, the more difficult it becomes to say what needs to be said. And this sense of limited time is what adds urgency to their thoughts. Not because there is a specific deadline, but because emotionally, it feels like something that should not be postponed any further. And this is where everything begins to align, their thoughts, their emotions, their awareness, all moving in the same direction, all pointing toward the same outcome. They are preparing themselves to break the silence, to take the step they once avoided, to express what they now understand. And even though the action has not fully happened yet, it is already forming, already taking shape, already moving toward becoming something real, something that will soon reach you in a way that makes everything clear, everything visible, and everything impossible to ignore. As everything continues to build within them, it reaches a point where the decision they have been moving toward is no longer something distant or uncertain, but something that feels immediate, something that feels like it must happen rather than something they can continue to delay, and this is where the internal process they have been going through begins to turn into real intention. The thoughts are no longer scattered or unclear. The emotions are no longer something they are trying to understand. Everything has aligned into one clear realization: they regret losing you, and that regret now carries enough weight that it demands action. They may begin to feel a sense of urgency that was not there before, not a rushed or chaotic urgency, but a steady and undeniable feeling that the time to remain silent has passed. Because now, every moment they choose not to act feels like another missed opportunity, another step further away from something they now recognize as meaningful. They may notice that even small triggers bring everything back to the surface: a certain place, a familiar situation, a random thought, and each time it happens, the same realization returns, stronger than before. It is no longer something they can ignore or push aside. It has become part of their awareness, something that stays with them regardless of what they are doing. And this constant presence is what begins to shape their actions. They may start to prepare themselves more clearly now, not just thinking about what they would say, but actually forming the words, organizing their thoughts, trying to find the right way to express what they now understand. They may replay different versions of the conversation in their mind, imagining how it might begin, how you might respond, how everything might unfold once the silence is broken. And while these thoughts may still carry uncertainty, they also carry something else, determination. Because at this stage, they are no longer deciding whether to act. They are preparing to act. The hesitation that once held them back has weakened significantly, replaced by the understanding that doing nothing is no longer an option that feels right. They may still feel nervous, still feel unsure about how things will be received, but those feelings are no longer strong enough to stop them. Instead, they exist alongside a stronger force, the need to express what they feel. They may begin to realize that the outcome, whatever it may be, is less important than the act of expressing the truth itself. Because now, keeping everything inside feels heavier than the possibility of rejection or misunderstanding. And that shift in perspective is what brings them closer to taking action than ever before. You may begin to feel something more noticeable at this stage, a stronger sense that something is about to happen, that something is moving toward you even if you have not yet seen it. This feeling is not random, it is connected to the stage they are in, to the decision that is now almost fully formed, to the action that is about to take place. Because once someone reaches this level of clarity, once regret becomes fully understood and emotionally felt, it does not remain internal for long. It moves outward, it seeks expression, it turns into something real. They are now at the point where the silence between you is about to be broken, not because of impulse, but because of everything that has been building inside them over time. The realization, the reflection, the emotional weight, all of it has led to this moment. And now, they are standing at the edge of action, where the next step is no longer something they are considering, but something they are ready to take. They may pause briefly, not out of doubt, but out of the awareness that this moment matters, that what they are about to do will change the dynamic between you in a way that cannot be undone. But even that pause does not stop them. It only marks the significance of the moment. Because once the decision has been made internally, action becomes inevitable. And that is where they are now. At the point where everything is about to shift from being something they feel and understand to something you will soon experience directly. The silence that once existed is about to be replaced with honesty, with expression, with a truth that has been building quietly but steadily, and once it reaches you, it will make everything clear in a way that you may not have expected, but that has been forming for much longer than you realize. Before we dive into today's word, I want to thank our coffee partners. We are currently working toward a $120 goal to keep this ministry running and improve our quality. If this channel has been a blessing to you, please check the link in the description to support. Now, let's get into today's devotion. Now everything has reached the moment where what has been building inside them for so long can no longer remain internal, and this is where the shift from intention to action finally begins to happen in a real, undeniable way, because they are no longer just thinking about reaching out, they are on the verge of actually doing it. The process they have gone through has brought them to a place where the truth is clear, the regret is fully understood, and the desire to express what they feel is stronger than any hesitation that once held them back. At this stage, there is a different kind of energy within them, something more focused, more determined, and much less uncertain than before. The questions they once asked themselves, whether they should act, whether it was the right time, whether they should wait, have already been answered internally. Now, the only thing left is the moment of action itself. They may feel a mixture of emotions as they approach this moment, a blend of nervousness and anticipation, because they understand that what they are about to do carries meaning. It is not something casual or insignificant. It is something that represents everything they have come to realize, everything they have been feeling, everything they did not say before but now feel compelled to express. They may take time to gather their thoughts, to decide how they want to approach this, to find the right words that reflect what they truly feel. And even in this preparation, there is a sense of movement, a sense that everything is leading towards something that will soon become real. They may revisit the memories once more, not out of confusion, but out of clarity, reminding themselves why this matters, why you matter, why the connection they once had with you was not something they should have let go without understanding its value. And this reflection strengthens their resolve, making it clear to them that this is not something they can ignore or delay any longer. The hesitation that once created distance between thought and action is now minimal, almost gone, replaced by a quiet certainty that they need to do this, regardless of the outcome. They may still feel uncertain about how you will respond, still wonder whether you will be open to hearing from them, still question whether things can be different now than they were before. But those uncertainties no longer stop them. Because they have reached a point where expressing the truth feels more important than controlling the outcome. They understand that keeping everything inside will not change anything, that silence will only continue the same distance that they now regret. And this understanding is what pushes them forward. You may begin to feel something very strong at this stage, a sense that something is about to happen, that something is moving toward you in a way that feels immediate, almost like a shift you cannot ignore. This feeling is not random. It is connected to the moment they are approaching, to the action they are about to take, to the fact that everything they have been processing internally is about to become something you can see and experience directly. Because now, they are no longer in a state of reflection or preparation. They are in a state of action. They may reach for their phone, or whatever way they feel is most direct, and pause for a brief moment, not because they are unsure, but because they understand the significance of what they are about to do. This pause is not hesitation, it is awareness. It is the recognition that this moment marks a change, that once they take this step, everything between you will move into a new phase where nothing is left unspoken. And then, they act. Whether it is a message, a call, or some form of communication, they finally break the silence. And in that moment, everything shifts. What was once internal becomes shared. What was once hidden becomes visible. What was once uncertain becomes clear. For them, there is a sense of release, not because everything is resolved, but because they have finally done what they felt they needed to do. They have expressed the truth, acknowledged their regret, and taken the step they once avoided. At the same time, there is vulnerability, because now the outcome is no longer in their control. They have opened the door, but what happens next depends on you. And this is where the dynamic changes completely. Because now, the connection is no longer defined by silence or distance, it is defined by what has been expressed and how it is received. You may experience this moment as sudden, unexpected, even surprising, especially if you were not aware of everything that has been happening on their side. But what is important to understand is that this moment is not sudden for them. It is the result of a long process, a gradual build-up of awareness, emotion, and understanding that has finally led to this action. And now that the silence has been broken, everything that follows will be shaped not by what was hidden, but by what has now been revealed in a way that cannot be undone. Now everything has come full circle, and what once existed as distance, silence, and unspoken thoughts has transformed into something clear, present, and impossible to ignore, and this is where the true meaning of everything that has happened begins to settle into a deeper understanding for you, because what you are experiencing now is not just a moment. It is the result of everything that has been unfolding behind the scenes for a long time. The message, the action, the breaking of silence that you have now received is not something sudden, even if it may feel that way from your perspective. It is the final step in a process that started quietly within them, built through realization, deepened through reflection, and finally reached a point where it could no longer remain hidden. And now that it has reached you, everything changes. The connection is no longer defined by uncertainty or unanswered questions. It is now defined by truth, truth that has been expressed, truth that has been revealed, and truth that you now have the ability to understand and respond to in your own way. You may feel a range of emotions in this moment. There may be surprise, especially if you did not expect them to reach out in this way. There may be curiosity, as you begin to process what they have said and what it means. There may even be a sense of emotional intensity, because what they have expressed is not something casual, it carries the weight of everything they have come to realize, everything they have been feeling, and everything they did not say before but now felt compelled to express. But alongside all of that, there is also clarity. Because for the first time, you are no longer guessing. You are no longer trying to understand something that feels incomplete or unclear. You have been shown the truth directly, and that truth gives you something powerful. It gives you awareness. And awareness is what allows you to move forward without confusion, without doubt, without the emotional uncertainty that once surrounded this connection. This is where your role becomes the most important part of what happens next. Because now, the direction of everything that follows is not based on what they feel, it is based on what you feel, what you understand, and what you choose. You are not being pulled into something without clarity. You are not being asked to respond without understanding. You are being given the opportunity to see everything clearly and then decide what it means for you now. You may begin to reflect on how you feel about this connection at this stage, not based on the past alone, but based on who you are now and what you want moving forward. You may recognize that there is still something there, something that aligns with what they have expressed, something that feels real and worth exploring now that everything is open and honest. Or you may realize that while their feelings are genuine and meaningful, your own perspective has changed, and the connection no longer feels the same to you as it once did. Both of these realizations are valid, because what matters now is not what existed before. It is what feels true in the present moment. This is what makes this stage so significant. It is no longer about discovering what they feel. It is about understanding what you feel. And that understanding is what gives you the ability to make a decision that is aligned with your own truth rather than influenced by the intensity of the moment. As everything begins to settle, the emotional intensity that may have been present when you first received their message starts to transform into something calmer, something more grounded, something that allows you to see the situation clearly without feeling overwhelmed by it. Not because the situation has lost its importance, but because it has gained clarity. And clarity brings stability. It allows you to see things as they are, not as they seemed before. It allows you to move forward with confidence, knowing that whatever you choose will be based on understanding rather than uncertainty. This entire experience, from the moment they began to realize what they lost to the moment they finally reached out to you, has led to this point, not just for them, but for you as well. Because it has given you something valuable, the ability to see clearly, to understand deeply, and to choose consciously. And that is what makes this moment not just an ending, but a new beginning. Because now, whatever happens next will not be defined by silence, confusion, or unspoken emotions. It will be defined by clarity, honesty, and the choices you make based on everything that has been revealed. Now that everything has been revealed and the silence has been replaced with honesty, this is the stage where a deeper understanding begins to settle within you, not in a rushed or overwhelming way, but in a calm and steady way that allows you to fully see what this entire experience has truly meant, because what once felt like confusion, distance, or unanswered questions has now transformed into something clear, something grounded, something you can finally understand without guessing or doubting. The moment they reached out, the moment they broke that silence, it did more than just bring communication back. It brought clarity into a space that once felt uncertain, and that clarity is what changes everything for you now. You are no longer standing in a place where you have to wonder what they feel or what they were thinking. You have been shown directly. You have seen the truth in their words, in their actions, in the courage it took for them to finally express what they had been holding inside. And once something is revealed like that, it cannot go back to being unknown. It becomes something you carry with awareness, something you can reflect on with understanding rather than confusion. This is why this moment feels different. It is not just about what they said, it is about what you now know. And what you know allows you to see the entire situation from a new perspective. You may begin to reflect on everything that happened before this moment, on how things unfolded, on how the silence developed, on how the connection shifted over time. And as you reflect, you may notice that your understanding of those moments has changed. Things that once felt unclear may now make sense. You may begin to see patterns, reasons, and meanings that were not visible before. And this is not because the past has changed, it is because your perspective has. And perspective is what transforms how you experience everything. You may also notice that your emotions are more stable now, more grounded, more aligned with your understanding. Not because the situation is less meaningful, but because it is no longer uncertain. Uncertainty is what creates emotional intensity, what makes things feel overwhelming or confusing. But clarity removes that. It allows you to feel without being consumed, to understand without being lost in the process. And that is where you are now, in a place where you can see everything clearly and feel everything without losing your sense of balance. This is where your role becomes even more important than before. Because now, you are not reacting to something unexpected, you are responding to something you fully understand. And that difference changes how you move forward. You are no longer influenced by what you think might be happening, you are guided by what you know is happening. And that knowledge gives you the ability to make decisions that are intentional, thoughtful, and aligned with your own truth. You may begin to ask yourself what this connection means to you now, not based on what it was before, but based on what it feels like in the present moment. Do you feel that the connection still holds the same meaning? Do you feel that it aligns with who you are now and what you want moving forward? Or do you feel that while it was meaningful, it belongs to a version of the past that no longer reflects your current perspective? These questions are not meant to create confusion, they are meant to bring clarity to your own feelings, to help you understand what is true for you now. Because this moment is not just about what they feel, it is about what you feel. And your feelings are what will shape everything that happens next. You may also begin to notice a sense of calm replacing the intensity that once surrounded this situation. Not because everything has been resolved completely, but because there is no longer anything hidden. There is no more guessing, no more wondering, no more trying to understand something that feels incomplete. There is only truth. And truth, even when it carries emotional weight, brings a sense of stability because it allows you to move forward with confidence. This entire journey, from the silence to the realization to the moment of expression, has led to this point, not just for them, but for you as well. Because it has given you something valuable, clarity. And clarity is what allows you to move forward without hesitation, without regret, and without being influenced by uncertainty. Whatever you choose next will come from a place of understanding, not confusion. And that is what makes this moment so important. It is not just the end of something, it is the beginning of something new, defined by awareness, by honesty, and by your ability to choose what aligns with your truth now.